Well, it looks like most people are on, and it's 10:33, so we are going to get started. Please make sure you are all muted. I'm
Okay, let
going
me mute myself.
to stop it. I'm going to ask that if you have questions or comments that you'd like to make, please put them in the chat box, and Yvonne will be watching those. We are recording this session so that we can share it with those that couldn't make it today, because we had quite a few people who said they couldn't. And it's really awesome to see so many faces of LGers and friends of LG that we haven't seen in a long time. So welcome, welcome, welcome to a conversation with Jay Gsell, Genesee County Then and Now. And I have asked Jay to give us the best, the worst, and sometimes the ugly, and maybe what he thinks for the future. Jay was one of the founding members, along with Esther Ledley and a few other people. I remember being interviewed by a consortium of like a group of about 7 or 8 people who really felt Genesee County had to have a leadership program. And here we are 20 years later, and really proud and grateful for the support we've always gotten. Sorry.
Fuck up, Peg.
All right, big girl pants, big girl pants. Okay, so it is my pleasure and honor to introduce you to someone you all know very well, our friend Jay Gsell. Take it away, Jay.
All right, good morning. Well, like actually, in terms of some of the best, a couple of them are right here on this video, particularly my county highway superintendent, Tim Hens, and all the other people. I feel blessed that we have also Jocelyn Sigorski here, as well as Shannon, but also, even though I didn't get to be part of his hiring, Stefano Napolitano, the Italian stallion firefighter that we stole from Herkimer County. And then a whole lot of other people that represent what I think is, as far as a little bit of my legacy, as little bit of a footprint as it will leave here, is the people that work for Genesee County and all our related agencies, as well as what they do every day that make me and my job a whole hell of a lot easier. Understand that when I came here, and Esther, I'm not sure you were on the legislature at that time, back in 1993. But you have to remember, I was appointed on an August evening, and lo and behold, in the audience was Florence Gioia. For those who remember that not so great and shining example of local government, she had been on the city council, had been on the county legislature with Steve Hawley and Craig Juncker and Carl Perkowski and Paul Fitzpatrick. And she decided that, as always, she would attend our meeting. She had no way of getting there, so people had to pick her up and then take her back home. But she decided that when the resolution came up that she wanted to make a comment to the legislature about why they couldn't find a local person, had to bring this interloper in and this carpetbagger from Iowa. And remember, Iowa stands for I owe the world an apology. So she was kind of on point with that part of it. But that was my greeting to coming to Genesee County. Thank you, Florence. God rest her soul. And again, it's all part of what was going on at the time. As far as when I first got here, obviously I was number 2. Charlie Meyer was the first county manager for about 11 years. He had left and gone to Minnesota and Virginia Beach, Virginia, not necessarily in that order, and then ended up eventually out in Arizona, where I think he's now an adjunct professor at one of the universities out there. So I was the second of my ilk here coming into Genesee County government. And aside from a whole bunch of emerging issues that we were dealing with at that time, as far as funding, as well as capital projects, particularly the state had us basically under a consent order as far as trying to take care of our court system. We were crammed into the 2 buildings that are here on our triangle in downtown Batavia. About an 18-month delay in most trials because we didn't have enough space for the attorneys nor the judges. Even at that time, both the DA and the public defender were part-time. So we had a myriad of issues, both from a services perspective and then also capital facility perspective. Don't even get the sheriff, Gary Mayhaw, and even the current sheriff, Bill Sharon, started on the commitment that was made to them back in 1985 to do something with the county jail or lack thereof as far as a quality facility was concerned. So I also, since I came in August, it just so happened that since we're on a calendar budget year, I had to do my first budget literally as I was walking in the door. And so that was, again, part of what my orientation into the community was in many cases meeting for a lot of, with the department heads on the first time, for the first time, having had, starting a monthly process wherein we sat down and talked as department heads, at least so there could be some familiarity. And I remember the one thing that I think impressed Debbie Carr Rosenbeck, who was the Youth Bureau director at that time. Apparently Charlie always was in a suit. That's not my forte. I know how to dress up when you go down to New York City or go down to Albany, where remember, if you stay too long, you lose IQ points, those kind of things. Or, on United Way regional board meetings. But in terms of one of the things I said to Debbie was also she commented on my relaxed atmosphere. And I told my department heads at that time that my theme song was Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. So that still continues, all things considered. Again, also in terms of what we try to accomplish, what we've always done here at the county, was do it through teamwork. It's a collective effort. It's no one individual. It's about what we all do together, what we do as, making recommendations as far as the legislature is concerned. Obviously, we've had certain fits and starts, things that we had to also do, which was, reduce our footprint, change our footprint. Tim's done that in the county highway department. I think he's on 21 less people approximately than what he found when he came here. We hired him out of the military, he and Eve now being our procurement director, purchasing director here at the county. So again, two of my best decisions as far as people working for Genesee County government. By the same token, it's also what those people all do in their average daily lives and make my job that much easier. And also what we do as far as affirming to the county legislature that what we do is both vetted, important, and we give them as many options as possible. To the Leadership Genesee program. I had come from Iowa, as I recall, as you recall, and I spent 3 years there. One of the first things I did when I got there was they had a Leadership Iowa program in Marshalltown. It was actually a segment of a whole statewide program. So I went through the Leadership Iowa program. And when I got here, and we recognized between Martin Chulik, myself, Mr. Mosier from the newspaper, Peggy, and people like Esther and others, this was a gap in and Ray Sanfrantello, now in Florida, but formerly of the chamber, and the penultimate, and the only thing that kind of chokes me up still to this day is Jay Humphrey, and him not being with us, and what he represented to this community and as an opportunity, but what he was as a hard charger saying, why aren't we doing these kind of things? And one of them was, let's do a leadership program. So we looked at what else was out there as far as the kind of programs that are connected on a national and a statewide basis. And lo and behold, Leadership Genesee. And it was not a raging success right out of the gate. There was concerns as to how many people would we get, who would sign up, who would pay for it. Would it be self-sustaining eventually, which it obviously now is. But I think we also found the good home as far as the sponsorship, the primary sponsorship, which was Cornell Cooperative Extension and what that system brings to us as a community. But also now, are we over 500 or 400 people who've gone through the program, Peggy? Is that where we are at this point? You got to unmute yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're over 500.
There we go. When I look at the breadth and the depth of the people who've been in the program, and I think what it represents and how the program itself has changed over time, and with the graduates and the core group, facilitators saying, let's change the program, let's do different things, let's bring new information into, the program, as well as new facilitators and things of that nature. I think that's what's really great about the program, that it continues to evolve. It is not a static, formulaic kind of program in any way, shape, or form. And that's why we've had so many of our management people and department heads go through the program also, is that it's a great way to orient people new into the community or who sometimes get into their little silos and don't necessarily feel like there's any connection with the rest of the community. And I think one of the things that we've always stressed is that it's a great way to meet new people and to network and also to get a better understanding of what goes on in the community, what drives the community, to let the actual businesses and industries and the arts and even the public sector explain what it is they're doing and why they're doing things the way they are, so that you try to, break down some of the misconceptions, but also, the reality of what decision-making process is like, whether in the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, and how this community, it takes a village as far as this community is concerned. Not just a county government, not just a city government, but also, the entire breadth and depth of our 58,000 and change population to make this a success, and to be somewhat united, albeit with a lot of different philosophies and approaches, but as far as certain touchstones and goals that we have. The next thing I think that we really engaged in when I first got here also was, we added the 1 cent to the sales tax so we could pay for the county courts facility. We also leveraged, for those of you who used to smoke, the tobacco assets money that we got to pay off significant amounts of debt, but also fund 2 of our projects, part of the court facility, part of 165 Park Road where the sheriffs reside. As far as how we put our scarce resources to their maximum, but at the same time took care of some long-standing issues. When I got here, there was about 6 years worth of history of analysis paralysis of the courts facility, or a complex of public safety and the courts facility. We missed out on that by only building 2 stories, one of those not so good things, Peg, as far as the court facility. It should have been a 4-story building with police, city and county sheriff and dispatch on the 1st floor, then the courts, then the administrative people, and then even a little bit of storage. But again, the politics and at the time, the finances got a little scary to some people. So we just did what we essentially had to do rather than what we should have done as far as that was concerned. The other thing is we started doing the comprehensive plan. It was not necessarily rocket science, but again, Jay Humphrey, Stu Steiner, and others said, what's your overall plan? How's it going to fit in, and how are you going to get the rest of us to buy in and take charge of what this community needs to do and how it changes? So we did the county comprehensive plan. Also, because we identified through that, along with our smart growth plan, top priorities were potable water as many places as we could logically and engineering wise put it, economic development and opportunities spread out across the county, and not have it just sort of what they would call urban spread. Not that there's anything necessarily urban about any parts of our community. And then what we can do to solidify the job opportunities within the county. And I mean the broad sector, public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector. Give people some choices. We're looking at the future as far as what the workforce is going to look like, what was going on with declining enrollments and even numbers in schools, things of that nature, but also a lot of opportunities that were being missed at that time as far as economic development, because we didn't have the assets and we didn't have the resources at the right locations. Remember, and the one thing I always kid, I was talking to Steve Aquario from NISAC last week. I mentioned to him that, we have 3 interchanges on the New York State Thruway. Aside from Syracuse and a few other places, not many other locations have that. And that distinct advantage was something we were not utilizing to its effectiveness. And so that was part of what emanated from the comprehensive plan. About 125 people that engaged with us, and many of them are still engaged. We're now doing a complete makeover of it. So that's a good thing. At the time is right, as far as that's concerned. And that's something that, again, will stand us greatly to 2050, at least, as far as what the county's doing, but what everybody else is doing as far as developing this community, keeping it healthy, safe, but also providing opportunities, homegrown opportunities for employment, continuing education, the ability to move in the community when the opportunity provides itself, but also to make sure that people are informed and engaged in how this community as a group moves forward. So I think that's kind of, as far as from my perception, are some of the major initial accomplishments. We've now moved into phase 2+3 on the county water project. Great thanks to Steve, to Tim, and to our consulting engineers, Clark Patterson Lee, also the county legislators who supported this, moving this forward. It's still a project very much in flux. But again, when we're all said and done, we'll probably have spent about almost $100 million on water infrastructure when phase 3 is done in about 2023 or 2025. But it's still vitally and absolutely necessary. That factor combined with the lack still of, in many cases, the internet and connectivity and high-speed connectivity around this county, all 500 square miles, are two of those public infrastructure, private sector collaborations that, in one case, it's succeeded significantly. In the other case, we're still waiting on those providers, but also hopefully some facilitated funding from the federal government to really make sure that that pipe and those opportunities as far as the internet is concerned and the functionality of people, going forward is very much not a gap depending on where you live. And I see Lori Sparky Maston there. I know she lives down in Pavilion. I know I got department heads who, when they go home at night, don't have the internet. And if they've got kids, those kids can't do their homework. That is a crying shame here in the 21st century. That's still going on in a community that is equidistant between two major metropolitan areas, Buffalo and Rochester, that we still have that gap in service and no clear path to getting that done yet. But if you talk to the state, we got 95% coverage. I don't know what map they're looking at, except that must be for Genesee County, Michigan, where where they have certain problems with water pollution, not Genesee County, New York. I think also, as far as what goes on here, at the county level, we consolidated dispatch. We put the Sheriff's Administration building finally in good stead. We tried mightily to get the city to be part of that same development. Second time, it didn't quite work out. But, I think also, and I know Steve walked into this because it was already done, good, bad, or indifferent, we also made sure that ambulance services on a countywide basis were much more enhanced and more regular by virtue going to Mercy EMS. And we got lucky with that RFP process and that opportunity to switch from the public sector to the private nonprofit sector. And I think it's worked pretty significantly. There's still little areas where, the vestiges of the small fire departments and their ambulance corps are still trying to survive. But in the lion's share of the community, and I think particularly for the city of Batavia, we helped them get rid of about a $2.2 million a year expense. But from a revenue perspective, it was in the red significantly. And it was a serious problem. I know it was part of the problem that Jason Molino inherited when he arrived here after Matt the Crook Koppler left and went his way to Connecticut and is now holding on in a community in Michigan that's under state receivership. The black cloud continues to go wherever he is, so we'll go past that. But again, that was, I think, one of the things we tried to do was help stabilize a local community, right here in the center of the county with regard to the city of Batavia. And what Jason literally, I think he was barely here 6 months. It was amazing when Laura Landers and Fried Maxick showed up at his doorstep and said, by the way, we're getting ready to publish our preliminary draft of the audit for the past year. Do you know that you're about $2.5 million in the red totally, and in almost all of your enterprise funds, water, sewer, ambulance, and everything else? And it was kind of shock and awe for Jason. And yet he survived and is now hugging trees in Tompkins County on a daily basis. But again, part of how this community evolves and we continue to move forward. I think in terms of the future, as far as what's going on, I think everything is very bright, with the exception of what the state is doing right now or not doing as far as state aid and state resources are concerned. Obviously, COVID-19 has thrown everybody for a loop. We have Nate's on the housing initiative, and things we're trying to change as far as that's concerned. We've got a lot of irons in the fire. GCDC is moving on all cylinders as far as that's concerned. One of the other things that I've always had a great pleasure being part of, and I see Paul Geister here, is our Friday morning, first of the month Fridays in Kelly, Birmingham with the Chamber of Commerce and Tom Turnbull now and predecessors, as far as just a gathering of individuals in the community, public and private, just talking about what the issues are, how can we do things better or differently, and just getting information from people. It's all about communication, collaboration, and cooperation. And I think that's part of what I've tried to espouse as far as the county is concerned, but also the people that I work with and interact with on a regular basis. A challenge obviously is going to be how we come out of this pandemic with regard to the future in the community. The education system is going to be significantly stressed with regard to their plan of return and action, opening, reacting, the hybrid plans, the various things that the state's looking at, what they do or don't approve. We've been dealing a lot with at the county level, but also on a regional basis through the Finger Lakes Control Room, which is a conduit for information, and also actually a good place to, in some cases, get a dose of reality about how in the 9 counties of the Finger Lakes region that we are affiliated with, they're doing things somewhat differently than we might be. And again, referring back to the state saying, you guys got to get on board, you got to communicate better, and you got to let us know what it is you want us to do as we're trying to figure out through the various guidances and executive orders. And this is just my stack of paper, just on the executive orders alone and the various guidances as far as, how do you, if you're a bar owner, what do you got to do to stay compliant? If you're a retail store, if you're a dining establishment, if you're a racetrack, cars versus horses, and the fact that we haven't seen any enlightenment with regard to the casinos. We do not think that Darien Lake, the theme park, is going to see any activity this year, as well as what's going on with gyms and fitness centers, and some of those things that help people try to cope, get their endorphin rushes every day. I do that by formerly running and now walking every day. But there's a lot of people who want to go in there and get on the treadmill and just, pound out the miles. But those activities right now are still very much no clear path as far as when they're going to reopen and open. So that's going to be a concern moving forward, at the same time that we're dealing with issues with regard to, and I know staff understands this very much. The county's put together a task force on the future of the fire service, particularly the volunteer fire service in our various communities, and what's going on there, how it's changed, how it's struggling, what's going on as far as, initiatives to get people boots on the ground. What I know Steph is dealing with daily in terms of responses literally outside the city, because there aren't enough people on a daily basis getting in those trucks in a lot of our communities and fighting those fires that occur any given time of the day or night. Fires don't conveniently occur between 9 and 5 Monday through Friday. Or emergency responses. Forget even a fire, just the backup to, Mercy EMS, and the fly car system that they have. Also what it takes for, people to go in a multi-vehicle accident, things of that nature, how you sort through things. We know that there's always challenges dealing with the New York State Thruway Authority. The fact that the Thruway cops don't communicate with the state trooper cops, and yet they're one and the same, so to speak, as far as who they are and who employs them. And the fact that we as a consolidated dispatch are the dispatch for the trooper road patrol, but not for the state troopers who are running up and down the T-Troop on the Thruway. As you know, during storms, when they're shutting down the Thruway and dumping people off at 48, 47, and 48A, it's anything but an affirming process as far as where do all those people go, where do those trucks go, and how do you deal with them. So it's even that minutia that we find ourselves dealing with and getting into on a regular basis. I could keep going. It's only been 26 years. But I think also, in terms of 2 other things that we did that I think we're still seeing the benefits of. The county sold our CHA, Certified Home Health Agency, out of the County Health Department for a little over $1 million to HCR. And then about 2 years later, lo and behold, we sold the county nursing home, which was eating us out of house and home. And Esther knows this particularly, to the tune, by the time we sold it, to about $2.5 million a year in deficit financing, just to keep the place open and to provide services in the 240 beds that are up there on Bank and Chandler Avenue. We sold to private sector operation, which now also owns the facility in Leroy. And so that's been a good thing for them business-wise, but I think for the county transitioning-wise and services-wise, a good thing, but also fiscally a significantly beneficial thing, because we ended up with some money left over after we paid all our bills, settled all our accounts, and did everything else, that we could fund both infrastructure, that we finally gave Tim some money to fix the 250 plus bridges that we've given him the responsibility for, and also starting the funding for and analyzing what the future of the jail might look like. And that's been obviously put on hold because of COVID-19, but also because of the significant problems at the state level. And this is something that I foresee being continually visited upon all of us with regard to their growing deficit. It started out in April on the day of the adopted balanced budget at the state level of $6 billion. Now it's to $13 billion. It's supposed to be looking to be about a $67 billion deficit in the next 3 to 4 years. And that's before they do any of the other things and or whether or not there's any FedStim 4.5/5 funding that might help, us somewhat, but also the state itself start to at least draw the line back to even keel rather than significantly in the red. That's going to be an ongoing problem because their first resolve obviously is, we go at state aid, then we go at state aid to local governments, then we finally go at state aid to educational facilities. And then at that point, it's a matter of, the devil take the hindmost as far as what those repercussions are at the local level and how we deal with those things. That's going to be, I think, a continuing problem. I'm not sure that the state is going to be what I would consider fair and balanced with regard to how they do this stuff. Again, because they are struggling mightily keeping their own financial house in order. And we've seen a lot of that this particular calendar year, as well as what we've seen with programs in the past like Medicaid and some of the other mandated services that county governments provide. I think also, it's been a matter of, for us at the county level, trying to make sure that we don't ruin some of the good quality of life services that we have and provide to the extent or at the expense of what we have to do fighting the battle with the state dealing with the 9 for 90 mandates, the Medicaids, the probations, the indigent defense, things of that nature. All the social service programs that are coming out of 5130 East Main Street, the mental health mandates that we have. A significant problem right now with regard to all the people who have not been able to freely roam, in the community, their kids, adults, parents, grandparents, the nuclear homes that we have. Significant upcropping as far as mental health issues, something that we're all going to have to pay attention to, that I know our Linda Battaglia and our related agencies like JACASA and ACE Employment and the Mental Health Association are seeing more and more problems that we have to deal with and can't turn a blind eye to, particularly going forward. And I think in some cases, COVID-19 has identified where there's need for us to do better, not necessarily to do more, but to be more efficient and effective with those kind of services. So I've just sucked up pretty much the air out of the room. And so, Peggy, are you the moderator as far as muting or unmuting? I'll take any questions that you got. And if I can't answer them, I'll refer them to Tim Hens.
Yeah, so if you have a question or concern, and Jay has invited you to unmute yourself and ask. So go for it. Or raise your hand and let us know that you would like to ask a question.
It's Lori Sparky Maston. Thanks, Jay, for putting that out there. I just thought it was very funny. I've been on Zoom meetings before, and I've never seen that there was a raise hand, a yes, a no, a go slower icon. I'm used to Jay, so I just thought I'd lighten things up a little bit, but always a pleasure to listen to Jay.
Well,
Thank
as you know, I spent 46 years, I've spent 46 years doing this. And the first thing my wife always said when I went for an interview, slow your cadence down, slow your roll down. You gotta let them know you actually take a breath once in a while. And invariably, that would not work. And so it would be like, okay, what did he say? Where was that? Can you go back and repeat that again? Those kind of things. And I know in one case when I interviewed for a job down below the Mason-Dixon line, their Southern drawl and their relaxed, laid-back attitude and I did not go over well. But in hindsight, it's a good thing because I don't think I'd want to work in Beaufort County, South Carolina, based on what the interview and I did that day and the legislature that I was dealing with. But that's aside.
Nate.
Yeah, I got a question for you, Jay. I'm wondering what the 3 most important things that you told Matt Landers he would need to focus on in the next few years here.
Well, yeah, he spent almost 6+ years here already. So it's really going to be, making sure that the county government is good and healthy and financially stable, and that, we working with and for the legislature, is obviously a top priority in terms of helping them make decisions putting, recommendations and options in front of them, and also from the perspective of what it's going to take for our financial stability, particularly getting through 2021, his first full-time budget, and then what it's going to look like going out from there. In fact, we have a 5-year plan. While I know it sort of frustrates the department heads once in a while to have to keep going, updating that and saying, and what's the purpose of this? Having that out there now, I think makes more and more sense, as well as the metrics that are utilized as far as measuring success or failure or where we're going to have other financial constraints. Obviously also dealing with our personnel issues and all of our human services, human resources issues. Thankfully, we've got very competent Anita Cleveland as our department head there, but also her staff working with the county manager's office. And then also, the interagency communication and cooperation that I've always espoused, that I know Matt understands, and also has done many of the same things, particularly as we did our 40-year sales tax agreement with the city, as well as doing or trying to at least get the lion's share of our municipalities to understand the constraints we had and going to revenue distribution instead of the former sharing of sales tax based on a 1980s formula. And the problems that we have as the county going forward, having those financial responsibilities and really nobody else to send them over to or to hand off to or to delegate down to. And also you got to be grounded in your family, which I know Matt very much is, particularly with his daughter and her softball, his son and his baseball aspirations. He happens to be on the Yankees right now, so woo-hoo, that's a good thing. As are my 2 little neighbors next door to me on Washington Avenue. But that's also very important. You got to be grounded. You got to have that kind of holistic approach to things. And you never think about it in terms of taking something personally. It's not about personality or personal agendas. It's about, or letting people think that, it's you personally who have done this thing or done something bad or wrong. So you got to maintain that perspective sometimes also. So you don't just drive yourself literally crazy.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate all you've done.
Hey, back at you, Nate.
Robert Lapointe has his hand raised.
Ah, the Pavilionite.
Hi, my pavilion internet is not going very well, so let me know if
Go figure. Go figure, Rob.
I'm wondering, what are, looking back over the years, what were some lessons that other counties learned for us so we didn't have to, that stick out to you?
Oh, there's a whole lot of them. One good thing that we have is a very strong group of about 23 to 26 managers, administrative chiefs, chief administrative officers, and some of the other chief electeds who we've sort of conscripted into our group as far as NISAC itself is concerned, County Association. One of the first things, most recent things was Chuck Nesbitt up in Orleans County, now working in the private sector for Wendell Engineering. He took the bold step of, one, selling his nursing home just before we did. And some of the things we learned from his process and what he did, we avoided and went in a slightly different direction. So that was a good thing for us. He and we sold our CHAs at the same time, which was, again, for us, both of us, very good. The fact that we, and again, and I keep referring to this as the Genesee Orleans collaboration, we put a single public health director in place with Paul Pettit, or as I call him, the Big Ginger. Jocelyn is running 2 county youth bureaus plus the City of Batavia's youth bureau. And also what we did with regard to possibly in the future, putting together a 2 county jail program that will end up using all the things we've already done to vet and put together a capital project out on West Main Street Road out near County Building 2. Again, how we deal effectively with, or in some cases not so effectively with, state officials and some of the parochialism that goes on out there. And also in terms of a couple of the counties as they pursued or didn't pursue the sales of their nursing homes, and the lessons learned from that, I think, was invaluable to us. Also, we did a county collaboration highway study back in the 90s with Cornell Cooperative Extension, just as Tim was getting here, that talked about shared services and the ability for us to take care of things better. And also the information that was gleaned from the other counties that I think it was the professor from Cornell University brought to us and his recommendations. We've utilized those significantly. And I think also just the idea that we have to keep an open mind and also keep looking at ways, different and better ways of doing things, not just because they're different, but because they are both cost effective, services wise, might actually be enhanced services, not just even keel, but also looking at it from this perspective of we have the right practitioners in the right places to effectuate those changes and bring those things forward, which I know is what the county legislatures that I've worked for have always appreciated, with regard to what's going on here in Genesee County. And I'm looking at Kelly Kabbalah, but I also recognize that, we've got, basically a Glow Regional YMCA program going on. We've got Genesee Orleans Arts Council going on, things of that nature. That to me has always been something that, doing it by yourself and thinking that you can be this island or this, this, so to speak, singular insular silo. I've never seen it work anywhere else that I've worked. And it has not worked well in New York State, because that's how the state then, so to speak, separates us from the herd and then, picks your bones apart to the point where you wonder, how did I get here and what did I do? And how do I avoid that? So I guess those are some of the things, Rob, that I've learned that I think is how we as a county have survived and to a certain extent thrived, and it also is embracing change. Particularly, I remember now probably about almost 20 years ago when Steve Hyde came in, there was a complete makeover of the GCIDA to GCEDC, branding wise, information wise, staffing wise, which put them on the forefront as far as economic development is concerned, and not just somebody that relied on when the state came and threw you a crumb, state ESD, that, you take it and say, thank you very much. To quote Kevin Bacon, may I have another? It was being proactive and being very aggressive as far as those opportunities are concerned, but having the right infrastructure in the right places. And again, we've looked around other parts of the state. We are still one of the only counties in the state that has a smart growth plan. I'm amazed at that, because that helped us significantly with the water project, but also with other more shared services, more recent opportunities that have come along. One of the first questions is, how do you know what you're dealing with in terms of your land mass, your zoning, your development opportunities, and where is it that maybe you missed the boat because you didn't have something like that in place?
Wow.
Anybody else? Oh, one other point, because I noticed it today. The US Census. I know I'm sounding like a broken record. We got to respond. We are below 65% as a county. The feds are wrapping up their enumerator program a month early. There are still 60 million people nationally who have not been counted, who are out there that at least the Census Bureau recognizes should have some way, shape, or form of filling out their census form. Whether it's still, you can do it online. You can do it literally I know I've gotten 4 or 5 paper responses, even back when I had already filled mine out. But we have to do a much better job in this county, and particularly here in the city of Batavia, in getting people to fill out their census forms and return it. If that doesn't happen, we're going to be going 10 years with some serious deficiencies as far as state and federal aid programs are concerned, eligibility for certain state and federal aid programs, even what we're going to be able to do to recoup some of the money that we spent on COVID. If the FedStim 4.5 comes through, the first tranche is going to be based on population. And if our population goes from, it was in 2010, seemingly around 60,000, now anecdotally it's dropped to about 58,000. If we go down further and don't even do some recovery, we are going to be at a loss with some of the funding that's going to be available, even through that immediate program going forward. So I can't stress enough, and Steve Hawley just did a PSA. I'm going to do one tomorrow with Dan the Man Fisher down at Main and Center. We got to keep telling people and reminding people they need to fill out their census forms and get that information back to the U.S. Census. COVID-19 pandemic aside, that is, literally when you think about it, it's in the U.S. Constitution. For a guy as old as me, it was one of the first things that, aside from getting your driver's license, being able to register to vote, signing up so that you knew what your number was in the draft. The next thing was, how do you account for yourself as far as the census is concerned? And, that's an important obligation that we have, but it's not being dealt with very well right now. I think we finished in the 70s back in 2000, 2010. We got to do way better than that going forward. So, and I can't say that enough.
Yeah, we have put out emails to all of our alumni and class members probably 6-7 times.
Yeah.
Is there something else that we can do?
I think it's even just any opportunity that you have to reinforce that when you deal with, with people that even in your family or in your neighborhood. Did you fill out your census form? It's a very simple question. I noticed even there's radio spots now more and more on the regional media reminding people and anecdotally that we have an obligation and we need to do better at it. I know the last time, and I can't quote this morning the statistics that Felipe had, but the south side of the city of Batavia, on the other side of the tracks, as they used to call it, is still under-reporting compared to even the rest of the county and the rest of the city of Batavia. And that's where that's going to work to our detriment, because that's how, again, that funding is determined, but also even redistricting. One thing we were already being told at the New York State level, we're going to lose another congressperson. And so the Empire State is literally and figuratively dwindling when it comes to congressional representation. That is not a good thing. And we now finally, and again, this may make some people cringe, we finally have a legitimate congressperson. We went 4 years, the last 4 years without anything, pretty much. But now we got one.
We lost you. Wait, we're losing you, Jay. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Do it again. Try again.
Again, that we have for the representation and the redistricting that comes with every census. We finally have a legitimate congressperson, and Chris Jacobs and our temporarily adopted representative Tom Reed from just to the east of us, have been picking up the slack for us. But again, if we lose one more seat in the New York State delegation, that doesn't bode well for us at the federal level when it comes to negotiating and standing tall with regard to the federal government and the federal budgeting process.
Jay, not a question, but Sheila Hess has commented, we also leverage the smart growth plan to create the Green Genesee, Smart Genesee.
Absolutely. Good point. Thank you, Sheila. And again, that's the kind of thing that comes with, you have that base foundation and that plan, and you work off that to develop these other initiatives, but also these, I guess what I would call the care and comfort of our communities, as far as, again, why we put the smart growth plan in place. We had to make sure that as we extended water to a lot of places that never expected it. I mean, we're even out in the hamlet of Alabama. I think, are we on Water District 4 out there now, Tim, or almost? We're going to be there. I mean, they never thought they'd ever see water. And now we're talking not only, in the community and in the hamlets, and in an initial phase of STAMP, but also when big water comes in from Niagara County, it will not work to the detriment of the local communities as far as when STAMP really gets to its full build out potential. So it's that kind of planning and that kind of orientation, but again, protecting our natural resources, and I think 60% of our land mass is still agrarian, rural, agriculturally designated. That's a good thing, because we can still do at all the corporate parks, which are now, covering the entire broad expanse of the county, do those economic development opportunities and bring in those industries and sustain the industries that we have. Who would have thought that Liberty Pumps, back on their little old Route 19 building, that little ramshackle building just below the intersection of 31 and 490, would turn into the juggernaut that it is today. And I'm sure Charlie is smiling when he saw the floods down in Brooklyn, Peg, that your daughter and my son went through this past week, thinking, that's money, that's pumps, make more pumps. And what they've done with that, is an incredible feat when you think about a totally locally grown industry that is a juggernaut on a national basis, as well as everything else that's here. HP Hood, Oatka Milk, Graham Manufacturing, the little old mom and pop accounting firm of Freed, Maxick, and Battaglia is now part of Freed Max. And again, it's because it's what our people and all the people who brought those industries to this community and founded them decided that in many cases it's as good to align and to grow rather than just think that everything is right here in your own backyard. And those collaborations and affiliations, I think, have worked significantly to all of our benefit as we've gone forward.
Julia Garver comments, congratulations on your retirement, Jay. You have left Genesee County a lasting legacy. Thanks for all you've done. Good luck as you start this new adventure. You leave very big shoes to fill.
Thanks, Julia. Well, Glenn's there now. So, I mean, he's helping fill those shoes. So that's a good thing that we have people like that who can be part of the transition. And so that, organizations like that, which are vital to our agricultural community, but also to our business sector, continue moving forward rather than sort of floundering and maybe going off to the side. And I know that there's still other things we've got to do in the community. Amory and I are staying here. I've never lived this long in the same house in my entire life, and certainly never held a job this long anywhere. Most of my family gave up on me when they saw me moving every 3 to 5 years. And then all of a sudden they started to recognize there was something going on here in Genesee County. We are basically Jerseyans by nature and birth. So this is as close to home as I think I really want to get when it comes to, my native state, which is, has its own problems. Anecdotally, I can tell you that within the last 5 years, the place where I got my first full-time job, the city of Trenton, New Jersey, which happens to be during the daylight hours, the state capitol. One day, Amory sends me a note from the Trenton Times, which is connected to the Washington Post, and there's a picture of the city hall with a phalanx of FBI agents walking out with boxes and files and things, because the mayor and some of his administration were involved in what they call pay to play. And so the FBI came in and just wiped out the city of Trenton government in a day. And it wasn't the first time they had to do that. So, there are some things you want to say I'm glad they're behind me, but I have to go back and say that was my first full-time job as a CETA employee. For anybody who's even old enough to remember that, it's what is now the Job Development Bureau. And I was a CETA 4 and then a CETA 6 employee. So I was a kept man by the federal government there for a while.
Stop it.
No, I am not a native of Virginia, but now 3/5 of my family live there. I went to school there at the College of William and Mary. Not that anybody doesn't know that. But now my mother, my brother, and my one sister also reside there, all within about a 5-mile radius of each other. My other sister in Michigan, the one safe state that I could go visit if I wanted to see family, wants us all to end up down there at some point. I told her she's got to change the environment then. It can't be as hot and humid as I remember it. And also get rid of the snakes. Once you do that, I might actually spend some time there, but only to visit.
All right, Jay, I have a question for you.
Sure.
One of the things that we talk about a lot in Leadership Genesee, obviously our leadership, what we call capacities.
Yeah.
So the ability to effectively communicate or to collaborate, or to have courageous conversations, or to understand how groups work. In your opinion for yourself, what was your most successful capacity that you constantly had to call on? And what was the value system that helped to drive that?
Well, I guess I think from my value system is how I was raised by two very hardworking and always working parents. I was the oldest of 5. So if you didn't speak fast and you didn't speak first, you got either left behind or you didn't get anything to eat. So that was part of how I was raised. But I think everywhere I went and what I did, I was a quasi-professional athlete for 9 years between high school, undergraduate, and graduate school. So you learn by being part of a team. You learn by what it takes to fund your education and perform at levels wherein you know that you'll keep your scholarship and you'll stay academically eligible. Those were always the prime objectives. I did survive a parochial education all the way through high school. Still have the marks on my neck from the nuns when they would, hit me with the strap that they had. Not that was, at that point abuse. It was probably well deserved. But I think it's the idea that in everything that I've done, in all the places that I've worked, it was always about leadership, communication, trying to be bold, not being crazy, and also look at it from the perspective of how you bring the right resources together and help them, facilitate them moving in the right direction and resolving problems rather than passing them on. When I got out of graduate school in Washington, D.C., it was just at the epicenter when the growth of the federal government was going crazy under the Nixon administration. So many new federal agencies, seemingly so many federal employment opportunities. And I would submit my applications, got my GS rating, you know, took my exams, you know, that kind of stuff. And then you'd hand in an application and you'd see them walk into a room where just the G's, there would be like 6 file cabinets worth of applications. So I pretty much figured this ain't happening. So I said, and also where will I go that when I made a decision and when I worked on a project, I'd see the beginning and the end. And so for me, that was local government. And that's part of my I guess what I would call my passion and my commitment is to making change, making it effective change. Understand that you learn from your mistakes, not that you wallow in them, and that nobody's perfect. Adam and Eve took that away from us when they took the bite of the apple. So you know, we got to just make do with what we have, but also in some cases utilize certain mistakes and/or defeats to be lessons learned. And that's a lot of what I learned. I allude to my 9 years of running, but I knew I always had to stay academically eligible, but also that I had to also be part of a team, because the only way the team would stick around, being in cross country and track, indoor and outdoor, was if we were reasonably successful. Otherwise, the school would just say, yeah, we don't need you anymore. We got football, we got basketball, baseball. Back at that time, women's field hockey and soccer. There were no other female sports. There wasn't a female runner anywhere when I was in undergraduate or graduate school. Only if they were out on the race courses, not in the college environment. So you even look around at that and say, boy, that's pretty unilateral and sexist. And it's part of what you don't want to be part of going into the future. Again, we look at it from the standpoint of fairness, equality, and equity. As far as what we have to espouse as the public sector, we are given the trust of the taxpayers and our citizens as far as the services we provide. But the opportunity to utilize those scarce resources as effectively and as oriented to the future as possible. And you don't play favorites. Again, those are things that I learned that, have been part of why I thought it was important also in a community like ours to have a leadership program like this. Again, and the fact that it's evolved, that it's not a static kind of formulaic kind of program, because all you folks have been participants in how it changes, how the steering committees do it, how even the monthly programs are dealt with by different people in different manner, shapes, and forms, and who they want to engage in the community, and what that represents as far as an awareness and a growth opportunity on a regular basis. I hope I answered your question, Peg.
You sure did. You sure did. By the way, everyone, I lived in New Jersey and my mother's from Iowa and my brother lives in Michigan. So there's lots of connections. So are there any other questions right now from anyone? This is your chance. Well, you'll always have a chance with Jay, but.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm on the board at United Way. I'm on the board at Home Care and Hospice. I'm on the Rotary board for 3 years. So Lisa Ormsby and others are going to have to put up with me.
That's right.
And Lori, with regard to how come Rotary went down that rabbit hole. Remember, for those who have ever partaken or at least made the purchase when we were doing it, I was one of the calendar boys, along with a certain other individual on this webcast, on this Zoom meeting.
I still have mine.
But again, we dared to be different, and it was because Rotary needed money. We needed, the things we're trying to do in this community as our Kiwanis and the Lions and others, you can't do it all for free and on the stint of volunteers. But the other thing is, and I guess my parting comment is that we have a great community, a fantastic community as far as volunteer efforts are concerned. Not just the official organizations like I just mentioned, but all the other things that get done because volunteers step up and say, I see they have a need, I might have a skill set, or in my case, I can just pick up a shovel and gloves and not hurt anybody while I'm doing it, stuff gets done. Like the Day of Caring, and the fact that we do that, and that's grown, exponentially. But what it gets done on a one-day basis in a community like ours, I think is fantastic. And it speaks to what this community is, the residents, the carpetbagger interlopers like myself who were not born and raised here. Remember my friend Joe Gerace, when he first came up to me, said, I know you're not from here, but if you stick around long enough and you listen to me, we might actually adopt you as a native. And I think I got to that point, or pretty damn close. By the time Joe, went up and is now watching over us on a daily basis.
Well, I don't think there's anything better to be said. So Jay, all I can say from my heart is thank you.
Now, compose yourself, Peg. Compose yourself. And I thank all of you for the opportunity, like I said, to suck the air out of the room, literally or figuratively. As I always say now, since March 6th, when last, people like Paul Pettit, myself, the sheriff, and our public health people, as well as Tim and the county emergency management people, we haven't taken a breath or a day off throughout that time, because that's just what we have to do. It's the same thing you do in any kind of crisis. This is a very unique and unusual one, and my sense is we will come through this, and we'll be in many cases good or better because of how we've adapted and changed, and it's just what we do here. And I think that's what I love about this community. And like I said, why Amory and I consider this our home. And it also happens to be, since our son's only down in Brooklyn, he's not halfway across the country or all the way across the country, that makes it also easy for us to stay rooted right here. I did make a promise, though, to Amory 42 years ago, that if and when there was ever a last move, she makes the decision. All she does with me is points me in that direction and says, get there and make sure that there's a roof over our head. So she may, in fact, decide that if she finds a house in Cape May, New Jersey, that we go there. If there's anything left of Cape May, it's literally being swept out by hurricanes and tornadoes on a regular basis.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Jay. I'm composed. I'm good. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And thank you.
Be well, be safe.
Yeah.
And yes, Lori Paff, whenever you next need me, you just tell me when and where.
And thank you for your commitment to LG, and please push that census, get people to get their census done.
Remember also, I'm one of the few people that actually have not gone through the program.
Yeah, we know that.
Just saying.
There's
I
always
want to make
next
sure
year.
that all the rest of our managers pretty much have done so. And I
Well,
think
there's
that's been a good thing for them.
Yeah, there's always next year, Jay.
You got
That's
lots
true.
of time on your hands.
I do.
That'd be awesome.
Oh my God, you guys, Peg, be careful what you wish for.
Oh, Yvonne, get him on the list.
Yeah. He's already there.
2021.
Jay,
One last thing. Esther, if you get a chance, give me a call. Please.
by the way, Esther, we love you, and our thoughts and our hearts are with you.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Bye, everybody.
Be well, be safe, everyone.
We will. Bye. Love seeing you. Jay, you cracked me up so much.
I think he's gone.
He just went, yeah.
Well, they're getting off. I'm gonna run
You're gonna what?
out real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay.